What is up, everybody? This is Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio. We will get started with our official live stream here in a little bit while I'm waiting on Morgan. But for this Supergirl Radio live stream, we're going to be talking about Superman, Man of Tomorrow. And I hope that all of my equipment, my laptop, everything will hold up for this stream. I've been having some technical difficulties the last couple of weeks, so we'll see how this one goes. I'm trying some new things, trying to check on my memory because I think my laptop memory is failing me. I think I've narrowed it down, but we hopefully will be okay trying some new things. So I see Morgan down there. Morgan, are you ready to go? I'm hoping that I won't have any technical issues, so you won't have to take over.
Oh, no.
So we'll see how it goes. I did a little StreamYard recording last night. It did not go well. But I found out there might be a trick. If you have too many tabs open, that eats up some memory. So, so I'm going one tab, Google Doc on the phone. We'll see how that goes. I'm just trying some new things out, trying a new setup out. It's probably not going to go well, but it should be fun. I guess, are we ready to go? You have the doc and all of the things. Okay.
I've got the stuff.
Good. And I hope you watched the movie so that
I did. That was important.
Yes. Okay. And made sure you watched the right Superman movie. That's also very important.
Always very important.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, we will get started here in a second and we will be discussing Superman, Man of Tomorrow.
McGurk! I
Do
love
not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And we are live and wired on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page to discuss and review the Tomorrowverse animated movie, Superman, Man of Tomorrow. And the reason we're doing this is because we watched the Tomorrowverse version of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and we were pretty confused by it.
A little confused.
So we're going to go right back to the beginning of the Tomorrowverse and watch all of the movies and discuss all the things so that we can catch up by the time that the second part of, I think it's called Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I think by part two, we're going to know. We're going to understand. We're finally going to get it.
We're gonna know all the Easter eggs and know who all the characters are and what they've been through. We have no idea when part two is coming out, but hopefully by the time that we get through all of the Tomorrowverse movies, it will be time for part two and we will be prepared. But before we get into discussing the movie, we need to get to
the news.
And so Laura Vandervoort posted to Instagram to celebrate the newest member of the Supergirl legacy family being cast, Millie Alcock. Share some fan art by @Buffy2Ville of her time in the Cape, as well as a few videos about the symbolic and historical importance of Supergirl that feature Laura, Helen Slater, Melissa Benoist, and Sasha Kage.
Yes, so Laura Vandervoort putting her reaction to the casting of Millie Alcock out there with some cool, I guess, AI generated. Looks AI to me, but maybe somebody could have, I guess, drawn that. But it
could be real art.
But it looks like AI generated. But it's pretty cool. So she chimed in about the Millie Alcock casting. Laura, of course, was Kara Kent / Supergirl on Smallville. So she is celebrating the newest edition of the live-action Supergirls to that little elite family of ladies who have played Supergirl on the big and small screens. So pretty cool that Laura chimed in about that. So glad to see the Supergirls supporting each other. Well, in addition to that, another past Supergirl has some big news happening. So Melissa Benoist returns to journalism in the Girls on the Bus first look. So we got a first look at her new TV show, The Girls on the Bus, that is going to be on Max. Yes, Max on March 14th is when the series premiere is happening. So we do know when that is going down. Perhaps we will do a pilot pod for that one. But we know that March 14th is that date. So on the series, Melissa Benoist, I always have trouble with her name, Carla Gugino, Natasha Benham, and Christina Elmore will play 4 journalists with varying points of view, all trying to survive the chaos of the 2016 campaign trail. I think this is based on Amy Chozick, I believe is her name. She wrote a book about her real life experience with this story. And she credits Greg Berlanti, with the idea to cast Melissa Benoist, whom he'd worked with on Supergirl, where she played a very different kind of reporter, perhaps a reporter who barely went into work, but somehow won a Pulitzer.
I would say that's pretty different. From somebody like on the campaign trail, like doing their job every day. Hers was more like a kind of a sometimes thing.
When it fit into her schedule.
When it felt right, when the spirit moved her, she would show up for work, but not often.
So continuing in this Entertainment Weekly bit, it was a pretty long article. I've got it linked in the video description below, and it will also be in the audio podcast show notes. You can read the whole thing. I just tried to pull the necessary bits out. 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙢𝙢𝙢, the real life reporter that this story I think is based on, said that I knew she was adorable, talking about Melissa Benoist, and could hit all the emotional notes. I did not know how naturally comedic she is. She's so funny. I think we knew that. I feel like Melissa Benoist has always had some humorous parts of her personality, even playing Supergirl. The article also says, and humor is a big part of the show of Girls on the Bus. Yes, it's about politics, and yes, it's airing during an election year, but there's also romance, intrigue, and a shirtless Scott Foley, who I don't know, but that sounds exciting.
He's from Felicity, which is where I mostly remember him, but he was also in one of the Shonda Rhimes shows. I want to say Scandal, because that feels right, but it could have been any of them. It could have been all of them. Maybe he's in all of the Shonda Rhimes shows. What do I know?
He just hops around the Shonda Rhimes universe from part to part. It also says 𝙎𝙪𝙢𝙢𝙢𝙢 is hoping the show can serve as an outlet for viewers, saying, quote, things are really dark right now in politics, in media, whether it's layoffs or distrust in media. And I think our show is an antidote, an escape, unquote, she says. And then she says, there's a lot of hope and heart in it. Also, 𝙎𝙪𢢢�𝙢 says the other thing I'm really proud of is that I think it really celebrates journalism. It makes the job look cool, and it shows how hard it is to devote your life to the road. It's prestigious, but it's not glamorous, unquote. The article says, at its core, The Girls on the Bus is the story of 4 women who discover they have more in common than they ever would have thought before they all walked onto that bus. 𝙎𝙪𢢢�𝙢 says, quote, we really do feel like the heart of the show is female friendship. This environment puts them together. You have to make conversation with the Fox News reporter sitting next to you at every event. Maybe you find that you have more in common than you think, unquote. And as 𝙎𝙪𢢢�� sums it up, she says, this is a pretty polarized time, but not on our bus, unquote. And that's how I know this is a fictional story.
Yep. Sounds right. I also feel like they've been talking about making this show for about 100 years.
It has been long in development.
It feels like it's been a really long time since, like, when it was announced, I was like, oh, that sounds like it could be okay. And then, like, 5 years later, it's like, it's coming out. I'm like, what? It's happening?
Finally, I guess they timed it just right for another election stuff.
They're like, you know what people want right now? A political show.
Shows about politics.
Doesn't feel like just staring into the void and screaming.
That actually sounds pretty great. I'm going to be honest. So there is
my political show where it's just me screaming into a pillow.
It would be very cathartic, I think.
It would be. Yeah. Scream time with Morgan.
Well, we do have some images from the show. I don't know exactly who all of these people are, but they do have Entertainment Weekly did have some pictures of
one of those girls was wearing at least 5 different pairs of pants all at once.
A very eclectic group of girls on the bus. And I don't know, are they physically on the bus? Did they climb on top of the bus?
Did they climb on top of the bus?
They're literally on the bus.
What if, like, what they're really doing is, like, they're not telling us, but the entire show is just like a bottle episode. Like, the entire show just happens on the bus. Like, we never get off the bus.
They have to ride from place to place, like strapped in little seats that are on top of the bus.
On top of the bus. You think that they're in the bus, but they're actually on the bus. That's the thing.
That sounds like that would be really adventurous, and I feel like you're putting a little risk in the show episode.
Is it a little dangerous maybe to ride on the bus?
They're really putting their lives on the line for journalism, so that's very exciting.
You see the title and you're like, yeah, the girls on the bus, like they're on the bus, right? But it's like, no, that would be in the bus, like sitting in the bus. What they are is on the bus. They're riding on top they're screaming their questions into the window. But none of the candidates can hear because of the because of the wind.
What if they actually like had a microphone and they somehow like were like shouting at people like as they drove by, like they had like a some sort of microphone that projected out from the bus.
What do you think about? Oh God, he's gone already. We gotta stop doing it while the bus is moving.
This is a show I would watch.
I think that, listen, it might be a little bit different than what the creators imagined, but is it a better version of the show? I mean, who's to say?
Yeah. So we have Melissa Benoist on the phone in what looks like a hotel room. She's got a laptop of political stickers on the back there. Really digging into the political
from
journalism.
72 when she was definitely alive.
She just really loves history, Morgan.
She does.
So I'm not sure. Is this isn't Scott Foley, is it?
It's not Scott Foley.
Okay,
no.
I
don't know who this actor is, but they seem like they're, I don't know, are they vibing a little bit?
This may be part of the romance that was
outside
mentioned
of
in
the bus.
When they leave the top of the bus, they actually meet people. It's a real emotional human part of the show. They actually go and encounter other people.
My favorite part of their character journeys is when they left the bus.
So there's another picture of Carla Gugino and Melissa Benoist in what looks like a 30 Rock elevator. It looks like one of those elevators that they got in.
Melissa Benoist is yelling into the phone, "Let them in!"
But in some sort of elevator, it looks like a wintertime. Maybe they've got some big coats on. They look a little cold. And then there's a shot that Entertainment Weekly had of them in the bus.
Oh my God, we're on the bus now.
They went from on the bus to in the bus. So it looks like they are talking. Melissa Benoist is talking to another one of, I presume, the girls in the bus. So there's our first look at the girls on the bus. That is going to be premiering on Max on March. What did I say? March 14th. So we will be on the lookout for that.
Corner.
So if you would like to watch that, maybe you could watch it for preparation for a Supergirl Radio pilot pod, and we'll have some fun with Melissa Benoist's new show that is very politically timed for an election year that hopefully will have some humor and some romance and some heart to it.
And Scott Foley apparently shirtless. They're promising things.
That does seem to be guaranteed.
It does. Speaking of our Supergirl cast in different shows, Kyler Lee commented on living up to fan expectations while speaking with Screen Rant at the Saturn Awards, offering advice to Alcock about taking on the role of Supergirl. Kyler said, "Those are big shoes to fill, obviously. Know your beep." It's kind of right. It's like stuff. Know your stuff.
Yeah, the S word. Yes.
Asterisk. Do your research and just have fun. Everyone's interpretation is going to be different, and you can't listen to absolutely everybody out there. Just play it with as much heart and soul as you've got, and do Supergirl right. Which seems like very good advice to me.
I think that's great advice. Knowing your stuff, I think is very important. That means knowing your lines, knowing what you're doing for the day, know your maybe some of your comic book history. You've got Millie Alcock's got a comic book that she can reference specifically.
Yeah.
So she should know Supergirl
Read
Woman of
that
Tomorrow.
one.
Yeah, maybe
sure.
Maybe read that one.
We can suggest some other ones. Does she want to know about her time as a soap opera actress? We got you there.
Yeah, we got that. So
maybe what if Tyler Lee was like, listen to Supergirl Radio. They will tell you about the different eras of Supergirl. Just we're available as a resource.
I feel like we're a pretty good resource. We have over 400 episodes. We've been doing it since 2015. I think we've covered a lot of ground with Supergirl. I feel like if Millie Alcock was like, "Ooh, in preparation, Kyler Lee told me to know my stuff. I should maybe see if there's a podcast out there."
Guess what there is.
Tom King might have put a little reference in Millie Alcox here. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Friend of the podcast. Tom King.
So it's cool that Kyler is passing on some advice from her time as an actor on the Supergirl TV series, the sister of Supergirl, giving her that advice, and actually one of the directors of several episodes. So knowing,
true.
How to direct somebody, how to have somebody play Supergirl, especially Kyler directed the young Kara, Isabella Vidovich, in season 6.
Oh, that's true.
So she knew how to tell her, like, this is what Supergirl would do. So Kyler did know her stuff. So I think that's really cool that she gave her that advice. I guess before we get into the discussion on the movie, because I think that's going to wrap us up on the news.
I think so.
I wanted to hop in the chat because there's some girls on the bus chatter in the chat. And I thought that was interesting. Daryl asks, are they waiting on the bus? Maybe. I'm sure there's I'm sure there's lots of waiting on the bus when you have to ride on the bus. Am I coming through? Am I okay?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's a little bit of a delay on my end, but I just wanted to check that there was nothing happening. Okay, all right. I feel like it's okay, but as long as you see it and hear it, okay, and I see it and hear it, okay, I think we're okay.
I think we're good.
Yes, okay. Let's see. Mark says they could switch it up in Iowa. It could be the girls in the truck bed.
Listen,
that's season 2.
That is a season 2 storyline. Mark, let's not get ahead of ourselves. They're in the bus. They're on the bus. You can't throw
they're
a truck
around
in
the
there.
bus.
They're around the bus.
They could be behind the bus. Don't be in front of the bus.
Don't be in front of the bus. Don't. But they're sort of near the bus, sort of around, you know.
What if they get left by the bus?
Oh my God, what if they get left by the bus? Then they won't be anywhere near the bus.
They won't be on the bus or in the bus.
Oh my God, maybe that's the way that the season ends. Cliffhanger. Where's the bus, they ask. Who are we if not the buses? If not for the bus? It's like an existential crisis.
I really like this version of the show. I'm going to be really disappointed if it's not like that on Mac.
I wonder if there'll be enough bus content for us. I'm suspicious there won't be.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, I'm now really excited about the girls on the bus. So I just wanted to address people's chats about the girls on the bus before we moved on. Okay, well, I think we've got all of our news and out of the way, and now we can get talking about our movie that we're going to be discussing here. Superman Man of Tomorrow is the first movie in the Tomorrowverse series of movies, so we're going to be talking about that. And Morgan, was this the first time you had watched Superman Man of Tomorrow?
It was. Yep. I didn't see this when it first came out. I think I maybe would have watched it if I had known. But it was 2020 and there was a lot of other stuff going on at the time.
It was a little busy. There were things happening.
Yeah, I mean, I spent most of that year in my pajamas, just kind of pressed up against a window looking out at the world. So I didn't really have the time, to click around on then HBO Max and really find it. But so I missed this one. I didn't know it came out.
So I had sort of seen a little bit of it, but I had not watched it all the way through. So this was a good chance for me to actually finish the movie. So that's good to actually start it and finish it. So I guess to get us started talking about the movie, since Superman is in the title, let's get to him first. So what did you think about Clark Kent / Superman in this movie?
You know what? I will say it was a little bit, I didn't know it was going to be an origin story. So I was surprised about that going in. I thought it was kind of just going to be more of just a story about Superman, but we really get like very origin-y very quickly in this story. And I feel like because it was an origin story, because it was about a young Clark Kent, it was a little hard not to compare it to My Adventures with Superman, which we have just watched within like the last 6 months. And I feel like that's maybe unfortunate for this movie. This obviously came out way before My Adventures with Superman. But I watched it afterwards, and so I didn't like it as much. I just like the versions of the characters that My Adventures with Superman. They sort of did a similar take where it's like a young Clark Kent, it's a young Lois Lane before they're like the famous reporters. And I just kind of felt like they were going for sort of the same thing, but I felt like the other animated show did it a little bit better, which is not fair. Again, this is not fair to this movie because My Adventures with Superman came out after this movie. So one could argue that like maybe they were inspired by this movie, but I don't know. I feel like the comparison didn't do this one any favors.
And to be fair, My Adventures with Superman is a TV series that has the opportunity to have a longer time frame, and this was a movie, so only had about an hour and a half. But I will say that's interesting you bring that up because I had the same thought about My Adventures with Superman. Very similar in terms of Clark trying to discover his Kryptonian heritage. And then even the Lois Lane live streaming and the monstrous parasite causing, wreckage in Metropolis. Those are a lot of the same beats in My Adventures with Superman. So it did feel a little bit samesies.
I even thought that the parasite monster looked a little bit anime-esque. It looked a little bit like it was inspired from like monsters from like Neon Genesis Evangelion and stuff like that, to the point where it did kind of remind me of some of the monsters that they have on My Adventures with Superman, except that in My Adventures with Superman, it is like very anime inspired, the art style and some of the story beats, whereas this one, it just felt like that element of it was a little bit anime inspired. But yeah, it was hard not to see parallels between the two properties, even though they were probably developed far away from each other, and it was just because they take place at sort of a similar time in Superman's life.
Yeah, I tried not to compare it, but even though I liked Ron Troop in this movie, I did miss Conspiracy Theory Jimmy Olsen. I tried not to put that on the movie, but I did think about him.
Flamebird.
Shoot! I have the sound effect somewhere. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be late on it. Yeah, that was
beautiful.
That was really late, but yes, I'm not on it because we're not talking about My Adventures with Superman, so I got to get a little faster with that. Yeah, I think they tried to do a lot of groundwork in trying to establish Cal or Clark's journey of discovering his Kryptonian side, and what I thought was interesting is they used Martian Manhunter to do it. Because he is the one who knows a little bit more about his Kryptonian heritage and also helps him figure out the little keepsake of memories, of Kryptonian memories that he has. So I guess in conjunction with talking about Superman, what did you think about Martian Manhunter?
I was excited that Martian Manhunter was in this. I'm a big Martian Manhunter fan now after Supergirl, the TV show. So I was excited to see Space Dad. I was like, oh my god, Space Dad's still dadding. I thought it was a pretty interesting look at the character. He's kind of a mentor to Clark, and I liked that aspect of it. And I like that he sort of teaches Clark about himself, because Clark doesn't really know who he is really until he really starts to talk to Martian Manhunter. I will say, and this is a spoiler for the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled on something, I'm sorry. They kill him at one point. He just straight up dies. And I was like, first off, how dare you? Secondly, how dare you? I was so mad. I was like, I have to look away. And then later on, he comes back and he was like, JK, that was all in your mind. And I was like, oh, okay. And then again, just getting ahead of it, Lobo is in this movie. He's really funny. He's kind of ridiculous. He dies. And I was like, oh, tough breaks for Lobo is what I thought. Oh, man, I was enjoying him. I was enjoying his cheeky little presence in the movie. But you know what? You got to have stakes is the thing. You got to have stakes in the movie, right? You got to, people can die sometimes. Okay. But here's the thing. At the end of the movie, he's just fine too. We saw his severed arm just kind of slowly, like over the course of like 30 seconds, go down into the water. And I thought, this is excessive. Why?
Real bloody,
real excessive. It took too long and it was very strange. And yet at the end of the movie, there he is, hands and all. And I was like, so 2 people died in this movie, but no one died in this movie. And I feel like it kind of deflated some of the like the air out of the movie that like either have them die or don't. Maybe you could maybe fake out with one person.
Yeah, one maybe.
2 is too much of a fake out. It's like, oh, okay, so no one actually died. No one can ever die. And it was a little bit, I feel like it kind of undercut the dramatic tension that it felt like they were trying to build by having character deaths by then immediately undoing them.
So I guess my question to your question would be, what do you think about the term immortality? Because at the end, Superman says something to the effect of, you could have told me about your immortality, kind of justifying how he's still alive. But my question to you is, if you're immortal, does that mean you can put yourself back together? Or does that mean you just never like have a physical like death, like a death,
like a decay? So okay, I'm glad that you brought it up because I wanted to ask you about it. So I don't have a ton of familiarity with Lobo as a character. I've seen him like pop up in stuff. Bunsen's seen him in stuff. Bunsen's a big fan. Bunsen is a bigger fan of Lobo than I am, obviously. That's why he had to be here right now on this live stream. So I was just like, is this like a thing about the character where sometimes he just picks up his severed arm and just kind of shoves it back? I don't know what my thought about immortality was like kind of vampire rules, right? Like they don't die unless you kill them, and then maybe they're dead. Then they're probably dead. But this version of immortality is kind of like nothing matters. There's no repercussions. He could be sort of exploded. Not sort of. He exploded himself.
Weren't there like little bits of pieces of him?
How long do you think it took all the little Lobo pieces to like gather themselves back together again? Like I had many questions when he showed up, completely fine at the end. Like, wait a minute, what? You blew up.
Yeah, I've understood immortality in fictional stories like this to just be that like you will live a long time but never age, and you could, I guess, be killed at some point, but you won't come back. That's how I've
sort of my view of immortality. I see in the chat, Mark says Lobo regenerates from any random body part, and I think they wanted to establish that. So is this like just kind of a known part of the character? Like, as long as there is a bit of Lobo remains.
That was not actually something I knew. I only really knew about Lobo from Superman the Animated Series and the little bit he's in Krypton season 2, which he's fit. The live action Lobo on Krypton, the sci-fi show, is so good. Krypton is a very underrated version of Superman. It really is. It's a good show.
We should do a pilot pod about it at some point.
We should, but really, you have to watch the whole thing. The whole season, first season 1 is just with the Brainiac. So I had seen versions of Lobo, but I did not know about that. I was also very surprised by Lobo's power set. He was like punching Superman.
Yeah.
I was like,
he was doing okay.
Hang on. He could go toe to toe with Superman. I didn't realize how powerful he was. I was very surprised by that.
That I see. Yeah, in the chat, Mind the Gap says Lobo first appeared in the Omega Men. He was supposed to be a satire of cool characters like Wolverine that emerged in the 80s.
So
Well, he does seem like a pretty cool dude. He rides around on a motorcycle. He's got a big cigar.
So he's with the Omega Men, like the famous Omega Men soap.
Like soap? Oh my God, is Lobo friends with soap? Lobo, tell us all about soap.
Mark does say we saw him do it in the Krypton show. He cut off his hands, skid it under a door, died, and then the hand regenerated into him. Well, I've repressed that memory of that. I guess I need to watch Krypton season 2.
Some wild stuff was going on in that show.
Yeah, I'll have to rewatch it. It's been a while. I really enjoyed Krypton. I'll have to go back and check that out. But yeah, some of the Lobo stuff, I was like, what is this?
I feel like there could have been a little bit more exposition for us non-Lobo maniacs, Lobo fans, you know, just to kind of give us a little bit of like, hey, as long as Lobo's hand is underwater, it's growing a new Lobo as we speak. Because I don't feel like that was well established. It was just like, I'm immortal, and it's like, okay, but you're also in many pieces. But it sounds like this is just a part of the character that he can just kind of regenerate from any part of him. If he gets killed, he just pops back up.
I think the word that Superman should have used would have been like regenerated.
Yes.
Not immortal.
That would have helped me, actually.
I feel like that's a big distinction between those two things. Not that really either of those is a realistic option, but I think it would have helped in terms of understanding it.
I think I would have immediately understood if he had said, you should have told me you regenerate.
Yeah.
And then I honestly probably wouldn't have had any follow-up questions. I would have just been like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I had many follow-up questions when he just kind of showed up at the end. As did Bunsen. Bunsen, how many follow-up questions did you? Well, Bunsen's a Lobo fanatic.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, Lobo's really wearing his colors.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Maybe Lobo's a Bunsen fanatic.
He's just cosplaying as Bunsen is what he's doing.
It cracks me up how much Bunsen just like likes to be here. He just likes to be involved. He's like not even being bad at this point. He's just kind of sitting here listening.
Yeah. Well, feel free to do that if you want to, Bunsen.
But anytime you want to contribute, buddy, feel free.
Oh, looking right at the camera.
Right at the camera.
Perfect. I'm going to screenshot that later.
He is real into it now. That's right, buddy.
So you're telling me that the capes, I said the cats should not like them, because I really think
he's
going to come up to the for the podcast,
he might as well. On. He could wear his little Superman cape, couldn't you? He's to be fair, Bunsen is the one that would be more likely to keep it on.
Oh, okay.
Instead of like immediately rebelling. I put it on both of them. Beaker like destroyed it immediately.
Oh, okay.
Bunsen just sat there looking like he wanted to die. But the cape was on him, so it was real cute.
Well, Bunsen is welcomed to the podcast if he wants to contribute any of his thoughts. It looks like we do have some more thoughts about Lobo. Mind the Gap says the problem with Lobo is the more he shows up, the less fun he is. It almost helps when he shows up and does something and leaves the story. So that's kind of what he did here. He did have a significant impact in terms of how they tried to get rid of Parasite. But I think there was the right amount of Lobo, I felt like, in the story.
I agree. I think that he was fun in this one, and I feel like because at the end he's like, okay, that was great, peace out. He didn't really overstay his welcome. Like, you got enough of Lobo. He got to be like snarky and do some like actiony things, and then at the end he decides to just go and leave.
Yeah, I felt really bad for Lois, who interviews him thinking that's going to be a great connection to her Superman piece. And he's
not helpful.
he's kind of, that interview does not go great. He teases her about a Kryptonian army invasion just to see the terrified look on her face, and he also demonstrates what I think is called the Appalachian mating dance, and which was highly disturbing. But when I looked up the Appalachians in DC Comics, they were an alien race that sent several of its warriors to Earth to see who could conquer the planet first, as a means of determining who would become the new ruler of their home planet. Their invasion led to the creation of the Justice League, and their first appearance was Justice League of America #9 from February 1962. So,
deep cut.
Lobo dropping some deep cuts in his weird Appalachian mating dance. So I appreciated that. One thing I didn't appreciate about Lobo is he's pretty much the cause of Parasite. He's like the reason why Parasite becomes a thing.
And then later he's kind of like, who could have foreseen this?
He didn't apologize for it one bit.
He wasn't even sad about it. He felt nothing.
He ruined this poor man's life.
That poor man turned into an anime monster, and he didn't even say sorry.
Yeah, I was like, that he could have owned up to that, but he definitely did not. So that was the one thing I did not care for with Lobo in this story. I guess we could talk about, since we sort of mentioned Parasite, we talked about him a little bit, but what did you think about? I guess not necessarily about the monster side of it, but the human element to it, because Clark actually has a relationship with this character, Rudy Jones, and tries to help him. What did you think about Superman and Parasite's relationship?
Yeah, I think it was a good idea to give Parasite not like exactly a tragic backstory, but some backstory to make us care more about the character and also more about Clark's fight with the character. I think it kind of gave the movie a little bit of emotional heft that, you feel bad for this character who seems like he's a nice guy and just was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'm assuming Clark might even feel bad that, he couldn't save Parasite from becoming Parasite. And also at the end, I think it made the movie a little bit, gave it more depth that Parasite is actually kind of the one who saves the day. He sacrifices himself to stop, what was it, like an atomic bomb or something? I got a little fuzzy on some of the details towards the end.
Yeah, that I was a little confused on, because I thought he was just going, I kind of like that interpretation though, that he was doing it self-sacrificially. It seemed to me that he still wanted power. I guess you could read it both ways, that he saw that there was another big power source and he went towards it. But I hadn't thought of that maybe he did it as a means to, because Superman does give him a hope speech.
He does.
He tries to pull a playbook out of Supergirl's playbook. But what I loved about that is the hope speech didn't seem to work, but maybe it did. If going by your interpretation, maybe his hope speech about wanting to protect people and having that same, they say that Parasite can not only take Superman's powers, but also his emotions and his essence. And Superman talks about, if you're like me, you love and care about your family and friends and you want to protect them. So maybe Parasite takes that part of Superman's essence and does that at the end in order to protect all of those people from himself. That's a really cool read on that.
That was kind of the read that I took on it, especially because right before he makes that choice to go to, the big power source, Superman tries to stop him and he absorbs more of Superman's powers again. And earlier when he had started to give that hope speech, it started to work, where he was remembering things from his past. He was remembering his time in the service. He was remembering his family. So I was like, okay, he just absorbed some Superman heroics. And now he's going to make the choice to try to save the day by absorbing all of this energy to try to kind of save people instead of just trying to get more energy. I think you could kind of read it in either way. I think they left it pretty open-ended because they weren't really explicit about why he was trying to go after the energy. So you could definitely read it as just it's a lot more energy and like that's kind of his whole thing. Or you could read it as him trying to save the day because Superman actually did kind of get through to him.
I really like that interpretation because when I was watching it initially and Superman, I mean, it's very emotional because I think Superman flies over there and he feels a little defeated. He falls to his knees and he looks like he's, grieving over the loss of Rudy. This man he had met earlier on in the movie and had tried to help. It almost looked like Superman felt defeated because he couldn't save him. But what if he did? What if he actually did save him? So I think that's a more hopeful, optimistic interpretation of it. I just kind of took away from it that like, oh gosh, that's really tragic. Like maybe there was nothing that anyone could say to him that would help him. But I like the idea that maybe it did. Even though the people there, there's a lot of discussion in the movie about the pub, Clark and having his fears about how the public is going to perceive him, and the public does not do well
No.
in that instance because Superman tries to tell them like, hey, he's not the alien here, I am. I'm the alien, he's one of you. And to not be scared, not to be terrified of aliens or specifically Parasite. And they kind of don't listen. They started throwing stuff at Parasite and yelling at him and cussing at him. And so I thought that was unfortunately a bad representation of humanity, that even after that big speech from Superman, we were still like, screw that monster.
Yeah. And also he had been starting to get he'd started to get through to Parasite. Like
Yep.
that was at the moment where Parasite was starting to remember his own past. And just as he was doing that, the people started like throwing things and were like, kill the beast. Thanks, Gaston. Thanks for nothing. And then he goes right back to being Parasite. So yeah, I think humanity didn't have a great showing in this in this movie.
Well, I guess to be fair to some of the humans in Metropolis, Parasite did kill a lot of people.
He listen. He's been having a week, huh?
Parasite killed all those doctors and nurses in the operating room. He killed that dude at the pharmacy. Parasite was really causing some chaos and killing some people. So some of those people could have known somebody who died. I'm not gonna judge. Maybe they were really mad about that. I don't know, because he did kill some people. But I thought that the way that humans sort of reacted, I guess felt like a normal human reaction. But I kind of wish they had maybe listened to Superman a little bit better. But that's, I guess, what people do. I guess there were some humans after the fact when Parasite is revealed to be dead, he turns into dust. When they show Lois and Ron Troop, Lois sort of takes a moment to sort of understand that she closes her eyes and lowers her head as if she's like recognizing that someone died, that this was a sad, tragic thing. So at least there was some human element to it where I felt like they recognized that there was a loss. So I did like that. I guess we hadn't really talked much about Lois Lane, and both of us are big fans of the character of Lois Lane. So what did you think about this interpretation of Lois?
Yeah, I thought this one was an interesting one. So we are like kind of introduced to her as, what is she, like a graduate student or something?
She is a graduate student who is the recipient of the Luther Journalism Scholarship.
Yeah, the Lex Luthor stuff in this movie, I think, is a little absurd because the first scene we get of Lois, she's like, "Here is a recording of you describing your crimes to me, like very explicitly, in like a very explicit way. You knew I was a graduate student in journalism." because you gave me that scholarship. And presume, like, in my like mental image, he's like just pouring champagne for her, and she like just fully has her phone like this as he's like describing his evil plan, and he's just like, solid choice, Lex, and then just like pats himself on the back. And then like later in the movie, Lois is talking to Clark about somebody like maybe somebody smarter than you should talk to. He looks down at the paper and he's like, yes, Lex, the man who decided to outline in painstaking detail his frauds to a journalism student trying to make her name in the big city. You know, that smart guy. And I was just like, oh boy. And then at some point, obviously it's a curse your sudden and inevitable betrayal where Lex is like, I will kill everyone. And Clark is like, who could have foreseen this? And it's like, Clark, my God, everyone. He's not that smart. He's not operating on multiple levels, Clark.
My favorite thing about Lex Luthor is Martian Manhunter ties him up, like gets him away from that weapon and like destroys his weapon that he has and just ties him up. And Lex Luthor can't do anything. He just sits there and tied him.
He's just like, I tried.
I hope it goes well.
You win some, you lose some, Lex said.
Yeah, I thought this version of Lois Lane, she was a real go-getter. She did the big interviews. She went to the action. She tried to, even when they were on, the city was on lockdown at the end, she got Braun Troop to go out there. Although she did like hang up on his 45-minute wait call that he had been on, like he'd been on the phone trying to get to the Pentagon for 45 minutes, and then she like just ruined it for him, kind of wasted his time.
I will say this Lois is like a little mean, actually. She's like a little bit not great. Like she hangs up on his phone call. He's like, dude, she's like, your stuff is not important. Diva's in the room. And earlier in the movie, when Clark is like, yes, a smart man, Lex, the one who just spoke to a journalist without even asking if it was off the record. She's trying to basically scoop him. She's trying to take his story. She gets out her little notepad. She's like, why don't you just tell Mama your source. Girl.
The worst part of that is that at the beginning of that scene, I thought it was real sweet. Lois came over to Clark's apartment to check on how he was, and he had lost some of his powers because of the parasite thing, and he threw a glass and cut his hand. So Clark bleeding is very unusual for him, and probably experiencing pain for the first time. And so Lois comes over. She's really sweet. She cleans up his wound and puts the Band-Aid on. And it's like, oh, that's so nice of Lois. And then right at the end of the scene, she does that bit where she wants to take his story, and Clark calls her out on it. And I was like, couldn't they just have a scene where like she's sweet to him? Like I thought that was
I thought they made her a little bit too abrasive in this one, if I'm being honest. Like I like a go-getter Lois Lane, but sometimes in some different versions they think like, oh, if she's a go-getter, she's got to be kind of a jerk too. And
yeah.
I don't always love that interpretation of her, and I think the Lois Lane versions that I like the best are the ones that kind of skew away from that. With like, with her being really talented and good at her job, but not necessarily like trying to steal other people's stories while they're like sick.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind. My favorite Loises are ones who are more compassionate and care about the little guy, and not necessarily like getting the story to get the story, but like getting the story to expose corruption or to
I think
to call people, have people in power accountable. Like there's a fine line to dance with Lois Lane where you can make her really good at what she does, but not make her somebody you wouldn't want to be around, or somebody who Clark wouldn't fall in love with. That's the thing, is that for Clark Kent to fall in love with her, there has to be something good in her.
Yeah, and it's like I'm not even saying that I don't always love the more abrasive Lois types, because thinking back to like the 90s Lois and Clark, she's very much like, ugh, this guy that I'm stuck with, and
She is for about 8 episodes. And
yeah,
then
she's not always nice to him, but
and then she goes to Smallville. I think it's the Glowing Green of Home, or whatever that episode is called. That is when she starts to see Clark in a different way, and she sort of like lessens some of that abrasiveness. But it's interesting with Lois and Clark, like they started it like that, and I think maybe they sort of realized like she's kind of awful. Like, don't
she's
do
kind
this.
of a jerk. But I also feel like they were at least they gave Lois like a reason to be kind of annoyed, because she gets like saddled with this guy, and like,
And she is awesome right out the gate. Like, she is the star reporter at the Daily Planet. So
and
having
he's just,
somebody
like, some
come in,
new dude
yeah.
that like she just gets like kind of thrown with, and she's like, oh my god, like I don't want to have to deal with this. Whereas some other versions like try to give her that same personality, but without like
earning it.
yeah, without earning it. Like, if like the first time you meet someone, you're like, ugh, why do I have to talk to you? It's like, no one asked you to. It doesn't have to be like this. And I don't think this version was too far in that direction, but she was like skirting it. She was skirting that line where it's like, I mean, I don't feel like we need to make her like mean for no reason.
Yeah, to the point where she gets bested at the end, almost like the butt of a joke, because like Clark pulls that power move thing
Yeah.
back on her. And I guess she sort of deserved it, because she had been kind of full of herself at the beginning. But I also don't think Clark should do something just to spite her. That I had an issue with that. But I think that there were moments where I thought was good. Like, there was a moment where she thinks that Parasite is gonna come get her. She drops her phone, and there's the threat of Parasite, and Superman saves her. And because of that, she then tries to tell Superman, like, hey, don't let him touch you. Like,
yes,
they sort of have this like mutual trust between each other. So I thought that was actually a good moment for her.
Yeah, I liked that moment a lot. I also liked the moment earlier pretty early on in the movie, when after she takes down Lex literally almost without effort. Basically just took himself down. She's in the Daily Planet, and Perry is like introducing her to everybody in a way that is like not going to make her any friends, and she's just kind of like, oh no.
Yeah, he says something like, good, they all hate you now.
Yeah. And I really felt for the character in that moment, because she wasn't trying to be like a show off or anything like that. She was just trying to be like, hey, hi, bye, nice to meet you.
Being really good at your job in that case became something that made her a little bit of an outcast.
Yeah, it wasn't great for her. I mean, later on, she probably didn't help herself by hanging up people's phones. It would have been great if like he wasn't the only person's phone she had hung up. She just like walked through the office, like just like slamming everybody's phone.
She has not garnered a great reputation so far at the planet, to the point where Superman is ditching her for an interview. Yeah, I was kind of mixed on Lois, but I really like her design, her animated design. I think it's really cool, like the way they chose to do her hair and all that kind of stuff. I know that's like a really superficial thing. But
no, I liked her hair
yeah.
in this one too. I liked her hair in like her cool little jacket. I was like, all right, Lois is okay. I'm maybe a little bit more mixed on her personality, but I'm loving her look.
Yeah, me too. So I thought all of the character designs were actually pretty cool. And one of the character designs that I wanted to ask you about was the natural form of Martian Manhunter. And I was curious what you thought about his pure alien form.
Yeah, I didn't love it. It's scary. He looks like
Is that the
Slender
point?
Man. I mean, it is the point that they're trying to make, is like, you can't judge a book by its cover. Martian Manhunter is Space Dad, and he looks like something that would haunt you in the night. He looks like a villain from The Conjuring. But he's a good dude. Just don't look directly into his weird vertical mouth hole, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the Martian Manhunter design for this one actually made a lot of sense for the story it was telling. Because one of the things that I picked up on, because I tend to watch these things twice so that I can make notes. The first time around is kind of a just immerse myself in the story kind of watch, and then the second watch is usually trying to take notes. And they talk a lot about the fear of aliens. The movie starts out with a young Clark Kent and his friend. I don't know if that was Pete Ross or not, but there's some unnamed friend, and they're watching an alien horror movie, which Martian Manhunter says, or he calls those movies terrible. Martian Manhunter, the film critic, I guess. And Clark sees his friend's scared reaction to the horror movie, showing the alien reveal. There's a guy in the movie that looks human, and then it turns out to be an alien, and so that really affects Clark as he grows up. And Jonathan warns Clark that there are powerful people in Metropolis who would love nothing more to get their hands on him. And Clark thinks that the public knowing about him might decrease their fears about him as an alien. There's a lot of talk about fear of aliens and what that means for Superman. I mean, even Martha gets in on it, and she says, I don't want him to feel different. And Jonathan is like, but he is different. This is something he's going to have to deal with. So I think for them to even have Martian Manhunter say, I've seen firsthand how rampant xenophobia can destroy a great civilization. Those are things that I thought they tried to really do a good job with in terms of tying a theme around the film, and how they dealt with that in terms of Superman, how they dealt with that in terms of Martian Manhunter, even to the fears of Parasite, and how they sort of twisted that with him being a human who looked alien instead of an alien who looked human. I thought some of that was actually really good. And so the Martian Manhunter design, where he's like this scary looking, like a genuinely scary looking alien, I thought was a good touch.
Yeah, I think it really does work thematically. Even when Lobo is kind of making fun of Lois, the way that he knows how to do that is by saying that that Superman isn't the only Kryptonian, and that there's a whole invasion coming, which is kind of like playing on this idea that like humans would be afraid of an alien invasion, would immediately kind of jump to that perspective that yes, that's what would happen if there's an alien. And I really liked the conversation between Clark and Martian Manhunter, where he basically says to Clark, well, as the last of our kind, isn't our job basically to survive and to because our people live on in us. So, keep staying under the radar and keeping a low profile. Like that's how we have to do it to survive. And I think it was interesting to see Clark kind of realize that that's not the path that he wanted to take.
Yeah, and there's also some conversation specifically with Jonathan and Martha and Clark, where Jonathan basically tells him, like, you're a man now. You're a grown adult man. You have to make these decisions for yourself. This is not something we can do anymore. These are your decisions. And so I think after that conversation with Martian Manhunter, Clark is like, okay, well, if I'm going to make this decision, I'm going to do it my way. Maybe Martian Manhunter would live his life like that, but I'm going to maybe do something different. And in my generous reading of the title, I sort of thought that was what it was talking about, how he's the man of tomorrow. Not necessarily that he's this human flying man, but he is a man who's determined his own path, I guess. Or at least he's made choices for himself. And so for me, and how I interpreted that, he's the man of tomorrow because he's this man who's making these decisions for himself about what he wants to do with his career, what he wants to do with his superhero life, those kinds of things. And so I thought that was actually pretty good for just being an animated, tight, what do we call it? A tight 90.
A tight 90 minutes, which I always love.
Even for a tight 90, I think it actually tried to do something pretty profound in terms of talking about the alien nature of all of these characters, because they had a lot of them. There are a lot of aliens in this one. So I really enjoyed that. Is there anything else, Morgan, that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
I'm trying to think if there's anything else in this movie that I kind of wanted to talk about. Oh, I liked some of the usages of a Martian Manhunter's powers, not necessarily the get out of death free card. I thought that was cheap.
Okay, but before we go on, I do have a question about that. You're talking about how he faked his like fiery death.
He sure did, yeah.
So I have questions about that because
I did too.
because Martian Manhunter, in my mind, could only shapeshift himself. So how was he portraying fire around him?
Yeah, I don't know. I came out of that.
Can he become fire?
I came out of that with like so many questions about like how his powers work. So did he like put it into their minds that that's what they were seeing? Did he do that thing that he would do on the TV show where he just like touched his fingers to his temples and thought real hard and then made them see his entire skeleton in the fire? Or like I wasn't very clear on that.
I just didn't know that he could like shapeshift elemental things. Like I thought he could only shapeshift his body and his voice and such.
I thought that what he had done was basically like get in their heads and make them see something that didn't happen.
Oh.
Which I guess technically he could do, but why do it for Clark too? Why not just do it for Parasite?
Huh.
Or I think they were fighting Parasite at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. So it seemed a little confusing to me. I mean, I know the reason is that they wanted to fake you out and think that Martian Manhunter was dead and then he wasn't dead. But it didn't make a lot of sense why he'd be like, you know what? I need this, person, the Parasite to think I'm dead to kind of get out of this. And, while I'm doing it, it would be really funny if Clark also thought I was dead.
You had to really sell it, Morgan.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? I am an actor. He's like, listen, when I commit, I commit.
He's no halfway.
He's method.
So what other about Martian Manhunter's powers did you want to talk about? Were there other aspects of it?
I did like that when he like tries to use his like mind powers on Clark, he unlocks memories that Clark had as a baby. And I thought that was like a cool way of letting Clark kind of learn about his origin story and kind of see his parents and see Krypton and things like that. I thought that was pretty a neat usage of Martian Manhunter's powers, especially in this version of Clark's origin story where he doesn't really know anything. They never found like the Fortress of Solitude or any of the info dump crystals, or they never knew how to use the info dump crystals, and so he's just kind of on his own. It's different than obviously My Adventures with Superman, where they did kind of find the info dump crystals, but it was like a strange Kurt Russell looking dude who screamed in a different language at him, and he was like, you know what? Never mind, I don't want to know. But I thought that was a cool usage of Martian Manhunter's abilities. I like to think of him like seeing the memories of a baby and how weird that would be. Like, oh.
So that makes me think about that question about why would Superman go to Lex Luthor, who was supposed to be someone smarter than him? Because Martian Manhunter, by doing that with baby Cal's memories, he learns Kryptonian.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
He's like, I can teach you the language. And it's like, I don't know, that maybe makes Martian Manhunter pretty smart. Why didn't Superman go to Martian Manhunter? Unless that was after he thought he died.
Did he think he was dead at the time? What if, okay, I'm just throwing it out there. What if Martian Manhunter was like, honestly, when I found out he was the last of his kind, I thought we would be able to bond and it would be great. But frankly, he's kind of annoying. And I thought we were going to be best friends, but like now I'm thinking like, do I want to be best friends? Maybe I'll just make him think I'm dead. It's like, he's like, instead of ignoring his calls, this is his way of ghosting is just fully pretending he is a ghost.
That also makes me wonder, Martian Manhunter, what if Lex Luthor really is the smartest person in the world? And maybe Martian Manhunter posed as Lex Luthor during that interview with Lois. And like
Ooh.
and maybe Lex is actually really innocent. And
That would
they're
actually
like
be really
framing him.
that would be really fun if he was just like if Martian Manhunter was just like a little bit of chaos. Like this is what Martian Manhunter does when he gets when he gets bored.
He's been around a long time.
He's like, I have been around for so long and I'm staying under the radar, but that doesn't mean I can't live my life. That doesn't mean Jean can't have a little fun.
Maybe Lex
that would
actually
be
is
amazing.
smart. Yeah. That is so funny. Well, I guess we talked a little bit about the animation, but were there any shots in this movie that really stood out to you of something that you'll take away from this viewing?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, but it's the shot where like Lois is got her phone and she's like taking a video and she drops it and you think Parasite is like about to come and get her and kill her and she's like hiding behind a door or something and instead when the door moves or the piece of metal moves it's Superman. I thought that was like a cool reveal and also kind of like very very classic Superman and Lois where she's doing something for the story that is like objectively stupid. Just kind of like no one can see me. And Superman comes and saves the day. I thought that was really fun. And kind of a fun call out to sort of that Superman and that classic Superman and Lois relationship where he's like, oh God, Lois just fell off a building. Hold on a second. And Lois is like taking notes on the way down.
Look, she just knows that Superman is going to save her. So what does it matter if she falls off another
She's
building?
like,
It's fine.
I've got this. He's got this.
Yeah, that is a really actually a great Superman moment in this movie. There were a couple shots that I really liked in terms of the cinematic nature of this animated movie because it should be cinematic. There's kind of at the beginning when young Clark takes off his glasses. There's a transition from young Clark taking off his glasses to adult Clark putting his glasses on. I thought that was a nice way to get the viewer from Clark is probably like a teenager to like adult Clark. Like he is, we've jumped in time without having to tell us we've jumped in time. I also liked, there's a shot where Clark's in his like proto suit with the goggles and his sort of makeshift cape. And I think he loses the cape at this point, but he goes up into space and he's holding out his hand because he's I guess discovering for the first time that the sun is empowering him and like re-energizing him. And there's a shot where he's holding out his hand to the sun while he hovers in space. And like the sun is above him on the right and the earth is below him to the left. And I just thought that was really good composition and had a lot of emotion without telling you anything and just relying on the visuals to do it. So I really, really loved that. And there's also one other shot that I thought was particularly good was at the end when Parasite is, I guess, according to Morgan's reading that I really like, where Parasite is going to sacrifice himself to stop the parasite stuff from happening to everybody. And he, so Superman's like weak and he's in the water and there's a shot of Parasite where he looks really big and he's walking past Superman. And it's almost like it's almost the perspective of being Superman in the water looking up at Parasite. And I thought that was actually really cool. So some of the shots and the animation in this movie I thought was actually really well done. So I was pretty impressed with the way that they were actually able to make this more cinematic in nature. Because some of these DC animated movies, like they're movies, but sometimes they, don't take that extra cinematic quality to it. So I appreciated that this one did, I thought.
Yeah, I thought this one was the animation style in this was really nice. I liked I really did like the character designs of a lot of the characters, not just Lois and her cute little haircut and her nice jacket, but I thought Clark looked really good in this one. I thought that Martian Manhunter looked cool. There was one point where Martian Manhunter was talking to Clark, and his little cape, like epaulets that like keep his cape on, looked like little hearts, and I was like, Martian Manhunter is just like so cute. I love him. So I thought everybody looked really good in this, and the animation, I think, and the animation style looked nice in this as well.
The one thing that I thought was pretty funny that the animation, I think, got away with a little bit was the fact that Clark lost his clothes.
Oh yeah,
we didn't really talk about that, but in Clark's initial attempts as Superman before he gets the suit that's made by Martha, his mother, and he's the sequence of this is to get him to the point where he realizes he needs a suit that won't get destroyed. But his clothes, when he comes in from space in the re-entry during his fight with Lobo, his clothes deteriorate and he becomes a naked Clark fighting to defeat Lobo. So I think the animation got away with that a lot more than maybe a live action version would, especially for an animated movie. I thought I guess it was tastefully done. There were a lot of bare butts in this one.
when he holds the guy up in front, like whoever it was up in front of him to kind of like shield himself from the nudity. I thought that was very funny.
I thought it was weird that the Daily Planet articles did not seem to mention this at all. I thought that should have been like the headline.
Nude alien
saves the day.
I also thought it was really funny in one of the early scenes when they show the Daily Planet headline where it's like Lex Luthor exposed, and then like below it is like aliens are real. That was the fold. You would think that would maybe be the headline.
Yeah, the bigger story. They could have combined them and said aliens exposed and put a picture of naked Clark on there. So I don't know what they would have done with that, but I just thought that was interesting that the animation took a little risk with the narrative bit there, where you have to get, I guess, Clark to a point where like he can't just wear his regular human clothes anymore, so they had to justify why he would put on the suit. So there was an interesting take on that. That seemed to happen a couple of times to the point where like he needed something. So that was funny to me. Well, I guess, Morgan, overall thoughts, would you recommend this to someone if they were interested in a Superman movie?
Yeah, I think I would. I thought it was pretty fun. I thought the story was pretty good. It had that kind of like personal connection because Parasite isn't just a monster. He is a monster with a tragic backstory. I thought Lobo was fun and used, I think, pretty well, as was Lex and his inevitable betrayal. I really like the the sort of the origin story that they told here. I thought was pretty well done. I think it was sort of I don't think it was like one of the best DC animated things that I've seen, but it wasn't the worst. So I think it's like a pretty fun hour and a half movie. If you're a big Superman fan, I wouldn't discourage people from seeing it. So I think if somebody was like, "Hey, should I watch this?" I'd be like, "Yeah, it's a great time."
Yeah, I think it's worth checking out if you like Superman. I thought this was a pretty decent take on his origin story and established characters who would be part of his supporting lineup. So I thought it actually did a pretty good job for what it was setting out to do. And before we go out of the discussion, Stanley asked, does this movie connect to other Tomorrowverse films? Yes. So this is the first in the universe of these films. So that's why we're talking about it, so that we can go through all these films together. So that is the first of the series. Okay. Well, I was going to do some snap judgments, and then I forgot to add them in the doc. But I think I thought of one, so maybe we could go ahead and just do one. And if Morgan, if you have a snap judgment that you can think of, we'll just do them on the fly and see what happens.
Sure, yeah.
All right, so we'll do some snap judgments. In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary. Okay, if you are Lobo the bounty hunter, which would be easier to which last of its kind alien would be easier to capture, Superman or Martian Manhunter?
Ooh, this is a tough one. Is it the Superman in this movie, right?
Yes, we're specifically talking about Superman and Martian Manhunter from this iteration in Superman Man of Tomorrow.
I feel like I would go Superman in this one because he's kind of just coming into using his powers. He doesn't have a lot of battle experience under him. Meanwhile, Martian Manhunter can truly just change the reality in your mind, it turns out. He can make you think anything. He can make you think that you're fighting a kitten. He could make you think everyone is dead and on fire and you can see all of their bones. So I would probably go Superman. This is not usually the answer that I would give because I think Superman is usually almost unfightable and unkillable. But in this case, Martian Manhunter is pretty strong.
Yeah, I would also agree. I think Martian Manhunter would be the more difficult one to capture if you were Lobo the bounty hunter. And the other snap judgment that I thought of off the cuff. So Parasite goes home to see his daughter and wife and scares his child. So which do you think is the more tragic outcome of that he scared his daughter or that he broke his #1 dad mug?
Oh man, that looked like a solid mug. I'd be pretty upset about the mug. I'm going mug all the way.
I think it is tragic that he scared his daughter, but I think the metaphor of breaking the #1 dad mug is very deep. That he is now not the #1 dad.
At that moment, he wasn't being a #1 dad. It's broken. It's shattered. He is not the dad anymore. So I think I'm going to give it to the metaphor of the #1 dad mug shattering 2 pieces. Okay, I have my off the cuff snap judgment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's go.
So my off the cuff snap judgment is sadder fake death.
Okay.
Martian Manhunter burning to the point where you could see all of his bones, his full skeleton. Or Lobo blowing himself up into bits and watching as his hand slowly, so slowly, drops into the water. Which of those moments did you think, oh man, I'm so sad that character is dead?
I'm actually going to say Lobo because I thought in the moment as he decided to blow himself up, I thought, wow, that was really heroic of him.
What a moment.
Wow, he was actually willing to do that for
to
them.
Sacrifice himself.
Wow, what a moment. So I'm going to say Lobo, even the fact although Martian Manhunter killing himself in flames, which is his notorious weakness, is a real choice. But but I think for me personally, it affected me more when Lobo blew himself up.
That's a good one. Yeah, I think for me, it was Martian Manhunter just burning down to cinder. I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was real. Why wouldn't I? And
traumatizing.
I went, what? They're killing Martian Manhunter in the first one of these movies? How dare you? But really, I didn't realize that Martian Manhunter was trying to work through something. He's like, I'm afraid of fire. So what if I pretend that I'm dying in a fire? Just really face my fears.
Immersion therapy. therapy.
Immersion therapy, he said. Nothing can scare me if I'm scaring myself. Good for him. I thought that was more traumatizing to me, though. I was like, I see all his bones.
That is fair. Well, yeah, I'm out of snap judgments. Do you have any
Me
more?
too. Me too.
Okay, those were some good off the cuff
High quality snap judgments.
snap judgments, since Rebecca forgot to put some in. So thank you for playing snap judgments. No judgments on your snap judgments. Well, I have continued for another week, forgotten to create some new plugs. So I'm just going to do a live read of them to tell people where they can follow up with us if they would like to do so. That's the way that you can do that. If you want to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on X and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Supergirl Radio is part of the DC TV Podcast and Multiverse of Color Network, so go check those out. You can, as always, hang out with us as we go live and wired on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and the Supergirl Radio Facebook page. You can also watch us over there. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you are in need of new DC TV related t-shirts or DC stuff in general, you can get t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers. And you can do that by going to supergirlradio.com and clicking on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Nice. And since we talked about Superman, a Man of Tomorrow, we have some Lobo designs, in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store that we would love to suggest. Now that we know he's immortal, and now you know that too.
People do love the Lobo character. He's very popular. He's a very fun-loving, quirky, cool guy. So we do have some new Lobo designs that we put in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store if you want to go check those out. So we've added some new merch thanks to Lobo's appearance in Superman, Man of Tomorrow. And we would like to thank our Legion of Super Sponsors for supporting the Supergirl Radio Patreon. These people are Michael, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Abby, Miriam, Nicole, Brian, Ethan, Danny, Majuba, Zachary, Annie, and Rachel. If you'd like to become a Legion of Super Sponsor, you can visit patreon.com/Supergirl Radio. And if you would like to follow me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram at The Derby Kid. I recently went to Atlanta Comic-Con and tried to practice some portrait photography on some cosplayers that were there. And so I got a couple of good shots. I'm still kind of working through settings on my camera, but I got a couple that I liked. And so I really appreciated everybody's patience with me as I tried to figure out the lighting exposure stuff going on in the Georgia World Congress Center. And you can also check me out on the social media platform Vero at Derby Kid. I'm over there sharing what I'm watching and listening to, and making connections with some other fans of the Zack Snyder DC universe. And I'm actually going to be starting to drop some little episodes or interviews with some other fans that I'm doing for a series about Snyder fans who have been labeled as toxic people. And that has just not been my experience. So I'm talking to some people who are actually really thoughtful fans that have contributed to my love of those movies, and who are doing some really cool things in fandom and in their real lives. I found out that my friend Damien is actually teaching Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice in his film course that he teaches. And I was like, yes, finally someone is teaching that in a film class, as it should be. So
that's awesome.
So I just recorded an episode with Damien, and so I'll be dropping that on my personal YouTube channel soon, which you can find at youtube.com/duckbunkprod.
Awesome. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Mojotastic. You can also find me as a co-host on the Legendary Ladies podcast, where this week we are talking about Whiplash. And there's a Supergirl connection because Melissa Benoist was in Whiplash. I think it was one of her earlier roles, and she's a brunette in it, just like she is in The Girls on the Bus. So there's connections everywhere if you look for them. So yeah, we watched Whiplash. I had never seen it. Amy had never seen it. It's one of Kat's favorite movies. So you can check us out, see what we thought of that, and then later this month, it's all Avatar: The Last Airbender all the time, baby. We're gonna do an Avatar pilot pod, and then we're gonna follow it up with a full season review. So the live action is coming to Netflix at the end of the month, and we are going to cover it pretty thoroughly. I think we're gonna try to get in there right after it drops and talk about the first episode, and then give ourselves a couple of days to watch the season, and then talk about the full season. So we're excited. We're hoping for the best. These live actions, sometimes they are good, sometimes they are not. So we'll see.
I have some questions that maybe I'll post to you off the stream about Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I think there was something at Atlanta Comic Con that was this big, like, it almost looked like an animal creature with big paws.
Appa?
Maybe. And I was like,
is he real big? He's like got big paw. I
real
think that's
big.
Yeah, that's Appa. That's like the main character. He like rides around on him. He flies. The big animal flies, and he rides on top of it.
Okay, he was really cute, and I took a couple
He's
pictures
so
of him.
cute.
But I didn't know what the significance was. But I did see on like a food truck, vendor truck kind of thing, that it looked like it had a Last Airbender connection. I was like, I need to figure out what that is.
I think you like, if at any point you decide to watch an animated show, Avatar is really good. You need to get through, I'd say, like the first couple episodes feel young, like feel like it's targeted at the age that it was targeted at. And when I started watching it, I was like, I am not 8 years old, and I don't really know if this is for me. But once you get a couple episodes in, suddenly things start clicking, and you're like, oh my God, this is really good. And by the time that you get to the end of the show, you're just like crying. You're like, the mythology is so beautiful. But there is a whole episode where like Appa kind of like goes on an adventure by himself, and it's actually kind of a tragic episode, but there's an episode, and then there's another episode where there's like a different animal character that gets his own like little subplot of like what he's doing. So I like that the animals, they kind of get their own storylines, like they're going through stuff too.
That's cool. Well, maybe I'll just check out that one episode to see what it's like, and maybe if I like that, I'll hop in the rest of it. Because I did walk by and I was like, "What is this?" I don't know, but it's kind of cute. So, I guess I learned something about Avatar: The Last Airbender. So good to know. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon, and we think that cinnamon in your coffee is really going to wake it up.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira. I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Yeah!